Hey everyone, it's Jonathan Mast, and I am thrilled today to come to you. Paul and I are going to do a live workshop. I've never done something quite like this before. You guys know I go live frequently, and Paul does as well. If you know Paul from his podcast, Paul will introduce himself in just a second. But Paul and I were chatting. So first, he had me on his podcast. We had a great conversation. You're going to love Paul and his voice and everything else if you haven't met him. And one of the things Paul shared with me is that he wants to write a book based upon all the podcast interviews he's done. And he's interviewed some amazing people, not me, but a lot of other amazing people. And we were talking about how can we use AI to help do that. And I said, well, how about we just work together on it? We collaborate, we'll do a workshop. And then I had this weird idea. Let's go live with it. So that's what we're doing today. This is not scripted. You guys didn't even see any announcement for it because we're literally just going live and sharing this workshop as Paul and I work through things. So Paul, as we get ready to do that and I get ready to share my screens, tell everybody just a little bit about yourself so they know who you are, and we'll go ahead and start sharing.
Yeah, my name is Paul Povolni. I was raised in Australia. Right now, I live in Jackson, Mississippi, in the United States. And so I have a podcast called Head Smack Conversations with Misfits. And it's a podcast where I just interview amazing people, interesting people. We have great conversations. We hear a little bit about their origin stories. And then we talk about some of where they're at and what they do. And they share some tips and information that's incredibly helpful for entrepreneurs and leaders and people that just like good stories. A lot of the people that I've interviewed share some of their origins, and it's nothing like where they're at. And so it's just kind of fun hearing that, we see the highlights, we see where they're at now, and we think, well, I'm nothing like that. How can I ever achieve that? And so it's really interesting seeing those stories of where they started and somehow how those things connected to bring them to where they're at. And so I've been a brand strategist and a designer for 30 years. And so about 3 months ago, I felt the urge to start a podcast. And then a week or so ago, I felt the urge to write a book. So that's what brings us here.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're actually going to work live here as we go through and make sure that we've got everything. Let's find the best layout here so people can see what we're doing. We'll make it a little bit smaller. There we go. That way everybody should be able to see the screen. And we're just going to, Paul and I are going to literally have a working session here for you guys to listen to as we go through. So we're going to start in Chat GPT, and we could use Claude as well. You'll see here I've got Chat GPT up. I've got Claude up. We've got Perplexity. Those are the things we're going to be using a lot of. And then in addition to that, I have a Google Doc that we'll be working on to create some content and share things. So I'm going to go back to my Chat GPT because it's the easiest one to use, the one most everybody has. And what we've done is Paul and I were talking, and Paul, feel free to jump in and collab at any time here. Paul sent me a number of transcripts from some of the podcasts. We're going to use those transcripts to help start writing this book. Now, we're not going to get it done today, but we're going to dive in and kind of walk through the steps. So the first thing I want to do, and again, Paul, feel free to add anything, is I'm going to go into ChatGPT here, and I'm going to upload the transcripts that Paul has sent me. And what I want to do based upon that is I want to have ChatGPT analyze these. So you can read my prompt. Please review the transcripts and tell me if you can identify a tone and style for Paul in these transcripts. I can't even spell right. The people that have watched me know, especially when I'm live, I can't spell and talk. And that we're going to use for our ghost writer to ensure they write in the tone and style that Paul uses. So we're just going to upload these from the computer. I've got 3 text files that I'm going to upload. These are direct. Paul, these were just right out of your podcasting software, I believe, right? Just the transcript, is that correct?
Yeah, this was straight, word for word, straight out of the podcasting software that I use to record it. I removed some of the small talk at the beginning and the end, so it's just literally what is in the podcast.
Perfect. And because we're going to use AI to write this, we want to make sure that we're getting a tone and style that AI can follow that matches Paul. So Paul, I'm going to ask you just to tell me if you think this is accurate. It's looked at those obviously very quickly. It says your tone is conversational and engaging, curious and inquisitive, and supportive and encouraging. From my experience, that's accurate. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. That's the whole goal, is for it to be a friendly conversation.
Style, we're talking storytelling approach, uses of analogies and metaphors, structured yet flexible, reflective and analytical, and inclusive and relatable. How do you feel about those?
I think that's good. And it towards the end of the podcast, there are a lot of tips and ideas that also help with, you know, bringing all the journey together and kind of wrapping it up with, here are the things that all these experiences have brought me to this place, and here are the things that I've learned, and then here are applicable things in my area of expertise.
Perfect. Now, we don't need to build a custom GPT for this, but it's going to make it easier for Paul to continue to build this. So I'm going to start by creating a custom GPT. If you're not familiar with that, that literally means we're just going to be training a version of ChatGPT on Paul's information. So, and Paul, we can always relabel this. So I'm just going to make it something really basic, like, well, actually, it's what's the name of the podcast? We could probably put that in here.
Head
It's
Smack.
something with Misfits, Head Smack. That's
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Conversation with Misfits, right?
Right. Conversations with Misfits, Volume 1.
There we go. So that's going to be the name. The description is, we're just going to tell it what this does. So take podcast transcripts and turn them into an engaging and entertaining book. Is that good enough for you for right now, Paul?
Yeah, I'm hoping that each podcast would be a chapter, but I don't think the description.
Well, yeah, we'll do that in
critical to
your
have that.
instructions.
Yeah.
So we need, let's see, I want you to use Paul's tone and style, which we'll present it here in just a minute, and the uploaded chapter transcripts. I can't think today. To create one chapter per episode transcript. Here is Paul's tone and style. And I'm just going to put those in some square brackets so it kind of knows they go together. Just a little tip. We'll also tell it here that please ask any questions you need to deliver the best response possible based on the prompt provided. So we're going to keep it pretty simple for custom instructions right now. We can always do more down the road, but we'll do that. Who do we see our audience being for this book, Paul?
This would be business leaders. I mean, really, it's anybody that enjoys a good conversation, but primarily a lot of the tips and ideas help business leaders, entrepreneurs.
Excellent. And if you guys are paying attention here, I'm literally just kind of typing in what Paul said there. So I want to tell it what we want it to do. We want to ask any questions based on the prompt provided, envision that. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to let it know, I just saw I misspelled Paul, put a T in there. There's a big shot. There we go. When all of the chapters are written, we will provide you with a draft of the book to create an introduction and conclusion at that time. What I'm thinking
And
here, Paul,
also
would be
probably
better.
back cover copy too.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Lastly, prior to publication, we will ask you to review the draft with introduction and conclusion to create back cover copy for the published book. Now, we wouldn't have to do all this if you're watching along. Go, why are you telling it all this? We're not going to get there today. No, we're not going to get that far today. But I want to tell it these basic things so that it understands and has context for what our overall goal is. So that should
So I
give
think
it good
possibly
context.
another, probably
Please.
possibly another goal would be, because Head Smack is about these aha moments that people have that changes their destiny, changes the direction of their life. Um, the phrase head smack is pretty critical to it, because
Okay.
kind of the core belief is if you get like one head smack aha moment and apply it, that it could literally change the whole direction of your life. And so that's
Gotcha.
what I try to capture with these conversations, and hopefully those that listen to them will listen to it, even if it's outside of their area of interest, and they'll be like, "Oh wow, that one idea can just change my life." And so that's where the head smack is. So I think it's pretty core that that phrase is used and those moments are looked for.
That's a really good stuff. That's good. So what we've got there is Head Smack is about the aha moments that business leaders and entrepreneurs experience that change their lives, I should say, make that plural because of the way we're writing it, where one idea can change a person's life. This is core to the book. And as you're creating the book, it's imperative that you look for and identify these moments in each podcast. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Perfect. All right. So we're just going to, at the moment, we're going to go ahead and save this. Let's create this custom GPT. Paul, so I can share it with you. I'm going to make it with anyone with the link, but that will mean that only people you share it with would have access to it.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and save this. There we go. And we won't view the GPT yet because I'm going to go in and we're going to go to the Create tab. So we were on the Configure tab for people that were wondering, just because it's faster. But we now want to make an icon for this. So please, they love icons. Create, and I'm going to say a Head Smack icon for this custom GPT. Now it's likely to come up with something, Paul, that doesn't match your brand, but we can always change it down the road if you care.
That's fine.
For right now,
This
just to
is
keep it
fun.
easily identifiable and hopefully entertaining as well. So
Yeah.
we'll put that in there. We go. You good with that?
Sure. Whatever it takes. If it'll help you.
We'll get started at least. All right.
Yeah.
So we've got that.
Great.
All right. So now, based upon that, we've got everything in there. I want to update our thing. Notice we haven't put a whole lot in here yet. We've just kind of described what we're doing. And part of the reason is I'm not sure I want to give ChatGPT all of the information at one time. I'd like to kind of upload one podcast at a time and see how it goes. So let's test it out. Real important, Paul, for you and anybody watching, when we're designing custom GPTs, we need to do some testing. And we're going to start that testing right now. So looks like this was Chris Doe. Is that who this is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. You need to introduce me to Chris. I'd love to have Chris on my podcast. I love it.
He's
That's
amazing.
great.
Super smart guy, super kind. And yeah, he was great.
Here's the podcast transcript with Chris Doe. If you don't know Chris Doe, Chris is on The Future, one of the best business people online in my mind. Just fabulous.
Incredible. And he shares so much as well.
So the first thing we want to do, we don't want to just have it write the chapter. If I give it this and have it write the chapter, it's not going to give us great stuff. So I want to actually, Paul, when we're writing a book, I want to have it review the transcript and create an outline for this chapter based on the transcript.
Okay. And so why separate that out? You were just about to say.
Yeah, well, the reason is if we tell it to write the chapter, we're going to get about an 800-word chapter and maybe 1,000 words. It might give us a little bit more. But by asking it to actually give us the outline, now we're going to be able to go back and have it write each section. So let's just take a look at what it gave us here. And I'm going to copy this over to this Google Doc so I can share with you so we don't lose anything along the way. So we'll just say Chris Do. And by the way, this is coming across in Markdown. If you don't like that, there's a simple little site we go to called Markdown to HTML. And we'll paste it that way instead because it looks a lot better. Then it looks the way we want it to look. So let's go ahead and zoom in here just a little bit. So overview, introduction to Chris Do, Emmy Award-winning designer, CEO, and founder of The Future. Paul introduces Chris as a key fixture in helping creatives build businesses and brands. Conversation is framed around understanding Chris's journey, his insights into creative industry, significant moments or head smacks that shaped his career, his origin story, his aha moments, discovering graphic design, focus on motion design, transition to brand strategy, which is what I know him for, evolution as a business leader, building and transforming brands. This looks like a lot of stuff based on your quick review, and I know we're not going in depth here, Paul. Well, that's something you can do later. But it does. This
we're
seem to be,
we're looking at ChatGPT right now. I don't know.
This is actually what they gave us in Google. I put it in Google Docs, so it's a little easier to read.
Okay.
But this is a Google Doc right now, so it came directly from here.
Okay.
So yeah,
wasn't sure if you thought you were showing the Google Doc, but
oh, I thought I was. I should share this tab instead. There we go. Duh.
There we go.
I was sharing the wrong thing. If I only do that once in this live, I'll be considered did well. So that's good. So anyway, yeah, introduction, overview, the context, his early life, his creative beginnings, his aha moments, how he transitioned to brand strategies, growth issues, lessons for creatives and entrepreneurs, differentiation, personal branding, practical advice, conclusion. I know we're just, like I said, we're just skimming, but as you reflect back on your time with him, does that seem like a reasonable outline for a chapter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's got a great backstory and great journey, and offered some great insights on personal branding as well.
So I'm going to go back then to ChatGPT and I'm going to remind it, even though we told it in the custom instruction, using Paul's tone and style and your best storytelling skills, please write the content for, not the whole thing, the introduction and those two subsections. Because if I give it too much, we're not going to get very much written. It's not going to flow well ultimately.
That's a huge tip, because most people would have just expected it to write the entire book in one shot. So that's amazing. Yeah.
So this will, and again, huge disclaimer to anybody watching, because Paul and I are doing this as a live working session, we're not going to be proofing this on the spot. We'll leave that up to Paul to do later, mainly because I don't want to, my ADD will go crazy and I don't want to do that. So we're going to copy this. We're going to go over to the book, and then I'm just going to come down in here. Oops, not print. There we go. Share this tab instead. Hang on. I did it before anybody could tell me I did it wrong. Go over to free Markdown. We'll paste it in so we get the formatted version, which in this case may not be significantly different. And we're just going to paste the content in. So there we go. We've got it pasted right in. Let's just read this the first little bit, see how it strikes us, and when they'll proceed. When you think of the creative industry, certain names just stand out. Those are the people who, through sheer force of will and relentless drive to innovate, have shaped the way we think about design, branding, and business. One of those names is Chris Do. Now, if you're in the creative space, chances are you've come across Chris before. He's not just the designer, he's an Emmy Award-winning powerhouse, the CEO and founder of The Future, a platform that's become a beacon for creatives looking to turn their passion into something profitable. First paragraph, how's that strike you?
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Not bad.
Really good. Yeah, not a whole lot I even see to change.
I want to point out to everybody, part of the reason this is working and coming across good already, and that Paul may have been able to say maybe not even anything to change, is we trained the model on Paul's tone and style by having it originally analyze 3 of the podcast episodes. And Paul's got many more, but we did 3 of them for right now. And based upon that, it created a tone and style that tone and style is part of what we put into the custom GPT. And so when it's writing that, it's referencing all of that information and keeping that in place. So let's continue on. We're going to now do section 2. And I know for those with ADD like me, you're going, oh my gosh, we're not done yet. No, we're not done yet. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to say now do the same with, and I'm literally just going to paste that in there.
So when I've been inserting content, I usually put it in quotation marks. Does that matter at all?
And to a certain extent, but not especially. It's really more for your formatting than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So it can help, but what really helps is, so ChatGPT knows what's called delimiters, and we can use those delimiters to actually derive direction of ChatGPT and tell it things that are more or less important. And so we can definitely use some of those delimiters on occasion. Delimiters, though, quotes are part of them, but it's typical things like triple quotes and square brackets, and it's things that look more like programming language than anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to copy this next. We're going to go back, and this is where it gets a little repetitive, but now the same for and we're going to do this first chapter, and then we're going to go do something that I don't think most people will be expecting here, and we'll go through, show you how we're going to then proof this and make sure that it flows right. Because right now, much like a writer, we're writing each individual section, and I'm sure, as you can imagine, Paul, we may get into parts of it where maybe sometimes it gets a bit duplicative or it doesn't flow quite well, and we're going to want to identify that. But at least for me, because I'm the ADD guy, sorry, as this is writing, I don't want to do it the long form way. So I'm going to show you how we use AI to do that. So let's go over here and copy this over. And if you're joining us, the reason I'm going to that particular tab called Markdown to HTML is because ChatGPT writes in Markdown format, and I don't want to put that in because it's going to look like programming language. So by doing it this way, we actually can have it converted into something that's totally readable for us. And I'm just going section by section. So this is what it gave us for this chapter on Chris Do. And I'm just taking each section. You may say, why didn't you say just use chapter or section 4? Well, I want to make sure that the AI fully understands what I want. And so I'm pasting in section 4 and the subsections so that it doesn't get confused. Anytime you're working on a big project like this, there's always risk that the AI gets confused. And we don't want that. So we're going to try to go ahead and give it little reminders. Think of it like you're working with a new assistant. Not that she doesn't understand what you want or he doesn't understand what you want, but it may be helpful when you're doing that to actually give them occasional reminders of what we're doing. And that's what we're trying to do with ChatGPT here as we go along. So we're going to just repeat this a couple more times. If I was doing a recording, I'd go ahead and pause this, but since we're not, you guys get to watch us live.
There you go.
Any questions as I'm going through this at all, Paul?
No, this is great. I mean, you mentioned it's repetitive, but when you think of what it's actually producing and the amount of time it's saving you, it's kind of like, waiting at the microwave, when it's got a minute and you like 45 seconds in, you're like, exit, I want it now. So we can get impatient, but this is just amazing what it's actually creating in such a short time.
Well, I think that's a great analogy. It is, it's important for us to remember that, yes, this isn't as easy as just writing one prompt and having a book written. If it was, books wouldn't have a whole lot of value, because I still contend that most people that want to write a book aren't willing to even take the time we're taking here to go ahead and do this. Because when they think about doing it with AI, they think about, oh, it's going to be super, super easy. This is like microwaving a meal is super easy, but if you've ever microwaved a baked potato, it still takes, I think, 6 to 8 minutes, which is better than an hour in the oven, but that's the longest 6 to 8 minutes of your life when you're thinking it's going to be ready really quick.
Right.
I'm just trying to skim it a little bit as it goes through. I obviously need to listen to this episode because I'm a huge fan of Chris's. But the stuff that I'm seeing seems to really reflect our conversations, Paul. It sounds like you for the most part, and it's got some good information in here. So I'm really excited as we go through this to kind of compare this in a minute and see what this looks like. And here's the good news: we're almost done with the conclusion, and all of the other work that we've done, all the prep work we did, we only have to do one time.
Well, and I love that it's simply not just, even though the podcast itself started off with a story, but it's not simply just a transcript. I love that it's taken the story shared and turning it into a new story and a new way of telling what was said. And so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because just reading a transcript wouldn't be near as fun as listening to
Right.
it. And it seems to be doing a good job of that. Now, the other thing as we're doing this, I want to mention is, Paul, what I would recommend is you continue doing this is that we go back into this custom GPT, and for each podcast episode, I would do exactly what we've done here, in that I would actually reach out and I would start a new chat. I would upload that transcript and I would write the whole chapter in that single chat. So if I go back over here to ChatGPT, all of this conversation has happened in one chat window. But if we do the next one, we should open up a new chat window and start the exact same way that we started here. And the beauty is we'll have all of that in our chat history if we want to go back to it. All right. So
and then you could also ask additional questions, right? If you want to create a social post or a little ad for just that chapter of the book, because it's in one conversation, you've got all that information in that one place.
Absolutely. Yeah. So since we've got this done, I'm going to go back and remove the outline a minute from our Google Doc. So I'm back in the Google Doc here, and I'm just going to go back and do a little bit of editing to remove that, because I want to have the system take a look at this, and I want to make sure our outline isn't in there as I'm doing that. So that'll take just a minute. In my ADD brain, it always takes longer than I want it to, but it's not too bad in the big picture. I mean, we've written an entire chapter here that looks like it's going to be about 14 pages long, and we did it in maybe 10 minutes, if that.
Right.
Maybe not even that. Now, obviously, we need to proof it, and we're going to do that. And this is ultimately Paul's book, so Paul will do whatever he wants to with it. But I thought it was a great opportunity to show how to work this, because I hear a lot of people go about, oh, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to make a prompt and it's going to be done. Not quite so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this. I'm going to go back and, oops, I didn't mean to get rid of that C there. There we go. We're just going to put in Chris Doe so we know what chapter that is. Now I'm going to save this as a PDF. So we're in Google Docs. We're just going to download it as a PDF. And I'm going to go over to my favorite proofreading software, which is Claude. Now, if you don't have Claude, it's a competing search engine, or it's not search engine, competing AI engine to ChatGPT. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that PDF I just created. We're going to upload that whole PDF. So that's the draft of the Chris Doe chapter. And now I'm going to have Claude think of this as like a different person. You know how you've probably heard this, Paul, you don't ever want to proof your own writing.
We don't want that's a terrible thing.
Yeah, we don't want ChatGPT to proof its writing either. So we're going to have Claude do it instead. And we could do Gemini, but I like Claude better. So please act as an expert editor and proofreader. Apologies to anybody who's watching this who may actually be a professional editor and proofreader. I'm not trying to insult you, but this is the best way to move forward. I need you to review the following chapter for my book, Head Smack. And what was it? Conversations with Misfits.
Yep.
Conversations with Misfits. Please. And now I'm not going to tell it who I want it to be written for, because I don't want it to take the easy way out. So I'm going to ask it to identify the audience, and I'll make it plural, the audiences that would find this chapter most helpful in their lives, and who would be most likely to get an aha or head smack moment or idea from this chapter? Make sense so far with that, Paul?
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason I wanted to identify the audience, I could just say, would this be helpful to business leaders and entrepreneurs? And it may or may not, but I really like asking it in this case, who do you think it's going to be good for? Because that may give us the opportunity to go back and make changes if we don't think it's right. So let's take a first look. So after reviewing the chapter, he believes Claude believes Claude believes that the following audiences would find this content the most helpful. So aspiring designers and creatives, that seems reasonable. Creative entrepreneurs, that's excellent. That's fitting our target. Established designers seeking career growth, maybe. There we go. Business leaders in creative industries. I think that's a good one. Personal branding enthusiasts, that's a lot of entrepreneurs. Educators, career transitioners, and freelancers and solopreneurs. As you read that, would you want to ask it what changes can be made to make it more appealing to business leaders? Or are you okay with that list as it shows up, Paul?
I think more appealing to business leaders. While he is primarily known as a teacher of creatives, but what he offers as business strategy and marketing strategy is really applicable for anybody. And so I don't want people to not read it because I'm not a creative. I don't need tips on how to run a creative business.
So let's go ahead and say, how could we update this chapter to make it even more helpful and appealing to business leaders and entrepreneurs, creative or not? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's go back to Claude and let's see what it says. Now, keep in mind, it's going to analyze that entire PDF we have uploaded because we're staying within the same chat window here. So we're not leaving upon that. So to make this chapter more helpful and appealing, consider the following updates. Expand on business strategy. Add a section that delves deep into how Chris Do's design thinking approach can be, and there it's going to actually give us some examples. Can be applied to general business strategy, including specific examples, leadership lessons, financial insights, case studies, technology, scaling strategies. Wow, lots of stuff. Huge stuff in here. And then it recommended some practical exercises, and it actually wrote a section on practical exercises for business leaders. Maybe that could be done as an addendum or as a chapter add-on or something. I have no idea if this fits, but it's an interesting way we might want to fill out. This might also be like if you maybe this would be good, Paul. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but if you decided to create a workbook to go along with this type of thing would be great to flush out and make, like a part of a workbook or something.
Right. Well, I like the idea of also having kind of a almost a summary or an action steps or an action items to do as you read the chapter, especially for those that are skimmers,
That's good.
that have ADD that are like, well, I'm not going to, that's a lot of words. I just tell me what I need to know and I'll maybe read it later, which they might not read later, but at least they have that quick, oh yeah, I'm going to read the chapter now that I've seen the takeaways and the action items.
And actually, that's a good one.
Now you're adding it here instead of in the GPT itself. So would that need to be added every time a new chapter is started?
We would, if we like it, we'll go add it back into our recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to test it here first and see how it does. But that's a great question. All right, so key takeaways. For those who are short on time, here's the essence of this chapter distilled into a key takeaway along with actionable items you can implement immediately. Adaptability, continuous learning, and evolution of identity are cornerstones of success in the creative industry and business leadership. Action items: embrace change, commit to continuous learning, differentiate and integrate, design, balance personal and business. That sounds like Chris to me.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go that. We're going to now go back into our convert so we can convert that out of Markdown. We're now going to go back to our book. And you want that at the beginning or the end of the chapter, you think?
At the end.
And we want to at least encourage people to go read the first chapter before they find out about that, right?
Right, exactly. It's like, what? Bonus? All right.
All right, so it looks like it actually had put in a takeaways already, which is similar. So I'm going to actually remove this section. We'll keep that in, and let's paste it in here and see how that looks. So now we're going from the conclusion right into the key takeaways and action items section. Obviously, we need to do some formatting for those of you that are paying attention. That's all right. But that seems to go through our action items. I think that's good. I think we should add that back into our GPT. So let's go ahead and go back to our GPT. I really like that. So I don't forget what to do. I'm going to go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that aligns with the whole idea of head smack is, you take action, because a lot of us hear great ideas, but we don't take action on them. And so the whole idea of head smack is if you just hear one idea and go all in and act upon it, it could literally change your business and your life. And so I love the way that's reformatted and added at the end there.
So let's go ahead and expand on our custom instructions here. Let's see here. Please ask any questions you need. We envision the audience being business leaders. All right, so I really think we'll add it right here. So at the conclusion of each chapter, I'm going to put it here after writing the chapter. And the reason I want to do this is sometimes AI will try to think too far ahead, and it may try to write this before it actually writes the chapter, and then we're going to have incongruencies. So I want to make sure I specify there after writing the chapter, include a key takeaway and action item section for each chapter. For those who don't want to take the time to read the entire chapter. We say chapter a lot, but that's all right. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Now, will that confuse GPT by using the phrase chapter, or would podcasts be the better term for it? Like, does it understand that?
So after the conclusion of each, because we're writing a chapter. So after writing the chapter, we could probably make that a little better for each. Well, we don't really want it to be the key takeaways from the podcast, because the podcast should be driving the chapter, correct or no? Am I thinking of that wrong?
Oh, correct, yeah.
And I want to make sure it's so, but here's a good example. I'm going to show you another hack here. So as you're building us out down the road, Paul, we're going to go ahead and update that. But at some point we get in and we go, I wonder if these instructions make sense. So I'm going to go over to Claude and start a new chat here a minute. We can always go back to the one we just left and say, these are custom instructions for a custom GPT in ChatGPT. And no, they don't care if we capitalize or not if you're watching. Please.
No, we're still seeing the GPT window.
Oh, they did it twice. Darn. darn. I was trying to get away with once. There we go. Please review and optimize these instructions to ensure they are abundantly clear for ChatGPT. So I'm literally just going to paste them in the same custom instructions, and I'm going to basically ask Claude to rewrite this. And notice it's adding some additional structure in here, including some process, A, B, C, and D. So that's interesting that it's done that way. It's even added some, so I kind of like what it's done here. It's saying by following these optimized instructions, ChatGPT should be able to create a cohesive and engaging book that captures the spirit of the podcast while maintaining your unique voice and style. So I'm going to trust it for now, and we're just going to go back in and we'll just do a replace. So just like that, I've replaced all the content. Notice it came across really nice and formatted, so it makes sense.
We're still in Claude.
3 times. I need
Should I just say
$1
the
for
number?
every one. No, that would be, hey, this is good. All right. Okay. Facebook, I'll review and optimize. So we want to make sure we get that done. I would share my desktop and it'd just be easier, but I just bought one of those widescreen monitors, which by the way, I love.
No. Yeah.
But if I share that, then like on here, it's like this narrow band in the middle of the screen. And it's like, oh, so I try to avoid that. So I'm gonna go with this. Now we can continue, by the way, to update these as much as we want, but I'm going to continue to update that so that we've got that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and update the podcast, update the ChatGPT. And now what's neat is if I go into my history, I can go back at any time I want back into this section on Chris Do, and I can even rename this if I want. So book, Chris Do chapter. So now I can always easily find that. And if I wanted to add anything else to this, I could do that. Is there anything else you can think, Paul, for that first chapter that you'd like to do? Anything from the Claude stuff, any of the recommendations that you want to have it go back and take a look at? We can go back and see what's there.
One thing to consider would be to have an opening hook that would pull people into reading the rest of the chapter, as opposed to just
That's a good idea.
jumping right into his story. Here's the enticing hook, almost like a podcast preview, clip, like a trailer, I guess. For the ADD people that are going to be scanning.
Yeah.
Should I read this chapter?
All right, so let's see what it says. We asked it basically, how about creating that? Let's see what it says. And it's going to go ahead and do that. Ooh, I like that. The $1,000 logo and the $1 million lesson. That fits Chris.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do, though, is I like this, but as I'm writing it, I'm thinking, we probably should do this. This is basing it just off the chapter because Claude doesn't have the podcast episode.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back and try it in ChatGPT and see if it gives us anything significantly different. Yeah, it's very different. Now, I'm not sure which is better. So this is, imagine waking up one day to realize that the very thing you've built your identity around no longer fits. The title you've probably worn for years now feels like a pair of shoes. 4 times. I'm just going to keep counting. We'll see if we can get to an even
4.
dozen. Yeah, that's what I need. I need like a good sound effect like that. That'd be good. The crossroads. This is the crossroads where Chris Do found himself not once, but several times throughout his career. Each time he faced a choice, cling to what he knew and embrace the unknown. What he chose to do next didn't shape his career. It redefined it. In this chapter, we dive deep into Chris's journey. What do you think? Do you like that? Or I'm going to switch. Do you like this version, the $1,000 logo and the $1 million lesson? I know
they're so juicy. Both of them, I think, are really. I like that headline. I probably won't be doing as much of a headline. It'll be the name of the person. But I do love. I mean, both of them had really great hooks.
How about let's see. Claude said this would be better. So it's like talking to mom and dad and going, but dad said I could.
Tattling on the other one.
What do you think? So it says Claude's hook is strong and engaging. It's a vivid, relatable story to immediately capture the reader's attention. Sets it up. Here's why it works well. If you're aiming for a hook that is both captivating and informative while promising real-world takeaways, Claude's suggestion hits the mark effectively. A happily married couple, I guess. So, which one would you rather post in from your perspective into the Google Doc? Or do you want me to put both in for now?
Yeah, let's put both in.
I can put them both in. You can always edit
Yeah.
it later. So we'll just go into the
Right.
document here, share this tab instead, and we'll go back up to the beginning. And I'll just put this before the introduction. Oops. And we'll just make this one, we'll label this Chat GPT hook. Get rid of a couple of those extra spaces from the way I copied and pasted that over. And then we'll do Claude hook. And then down the road. And this is really important from my perspective, Paul. Obviously, you'll do what you want, but I like to kind of create a working document as we're doing this, as you can see, that we can then work our way through so that as we continue to work through the entire process, we know we're going to go back through and do some editing. We know this isn't,
Right.
We haven't fully defined our process yet, but we're getting closer. All right, so we've got both of them in there for you to look at. Now I'm curious, we're going to be a little over because I have 2 introductions, but let's take a look at word count. So yeah, we've got about a 5,500 word chapter. I have no idea if that's a good or bad idea, but let's ask Perplexity just for curiosity. I'm writing a book, and my first chapter is about 5,500 words. Is this good or not? And I'm going to turn on my pro version. For those of you not familiar, Perplexity is an AI-based search engine. And so it's not just using its knowledge base, which in ChatGPT's case is a year old, and in Claude's case is about 6 months old. It's looking today. It's telling us it's on the longer side. So it's interesting. So average lengths, short chapters, 1,500 to 3,000, average chapters, 3,000 to 5,000. Looks like you're just barely. In fact, I'm sure if we take that other intro, it might be at 5,000. So to me, that sounds like you're in a really good spot overall. I don't know your thoughts on that, Paul, but it sounds like that's a good spot.
I think it's a good spot, especially if it's an enticing story that somebody is sharing. But if we're to shorten anything, if I wanted to pull back, then I would almost make the origin story less and the practical insights more. But I'm fine with, without reading it, I'm fine with where it's at.
All right. Well, we had planned an hour for this. I know we started a couple minutes late, but there is the first chapter. And basically, Paul, what I would do is I would go through that same process. I'll send you this GPT, by the way, but I would go through that same process for each transcript that you've got. Yeah. And I would literally just start off. I'm going to share this chat with you as well so that you can get a copy of that. Actually, I'll do that after we're done here going live, but I'll share that with you so that you have that as well to work off of. But again, I think I'd start, here's that transcript. Please review and create an outline for the chapter based on that, keeping in mind that we're doing this in a custom GPT for anybody watching. So we've already told it what our goals and objectives are. So that's why we can get away without giving it a lot more detail here. Well, Paul, what do you think? This was live. I didn't tell you what to expect. We just kind of went through it. What do you think of this process? And better, worse, longer, shorter? What are your thoughts? What are your just impressions?
Well, I love that it's more than just simply having it write everything. I love that it's based on actual content as opposed to, hey, write on this topic. So it's a lot more personable because it's writing in my voice. It's captured that from the podcast. It's using content from my podcast. And so I think even though it's not me writing every single word, it's going to be a good reflection of what I would probably write if I was writing it. I'll still go through it, and actually read it myself, make any tweaks, and possibly if I feel the need for it, I might even just hire a professional editor to just take it up another level, because I think they could also help with it as well. Because I'm not an editor, I'm not a professional writer, but this is incredible. I mean, this takes you to 95%, and I think it's a great way to write a book that is not just straight up AI written. I think it's, taking it step by step, creating the outline, and then going
Hmm.
through the outline is just absolutely brilliant.
Well, this is why I call it AI assisted content, because to
Yeah.
me, this isn't something that's just AI. It's not just you. It's AI. It's almost like you're working with a ghostwriter,
Yeah.
and AI is serving as your ghostwriter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love the
very
the
cool.
AI augmented creativity. I love
Yeah.
that idea.
No, that's very cool. Well, Paul, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to just hang out with us, to walk through this, to make it live. I want to thank everybody that has been watching in the chat. I see we've actually got Jeff Hunter, who's a great guy. Ross is in there. That's
Brilliant
awesome.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, got both of you guys in there. Thanks for joining us. We got more too. We've numbers have been jumping up and down. But thanks for joining us. If you guys have got questions about this process, please let us know. And then, Paul, I'm going to ask a favor out of you as you
Yeah,
proceed down
absolutely.
this path. Keep me informed as to where you're at on this, because one, I want to buy a copy of the book, but two, I'd love to just kind of know how you ultimately put this together. Maybe we can even do another live, when you're getting ready to publish, and tell everybody about it. Let's do a promo on it. I think this would be,
Yeah.
not only will this be a really good book because of what you're doing, I love your topic, but I think for anybody that's thinking to write a book, I love the concept of doing a podcast, interviewing people. In fact, you were telling me in the prep, was we were just talking earlier today, going back and forth. There's a book that went out by, oh, help me out, my
Tim
ADD just kicked
Ferriss.
in.
Yeah.
Tim
Yeah.
Ferriss, yeah. What book did he
Yeah.
write? He did the same type of thing, didn't he?
Tools of Titans. Now he didn't. I don't think he used AI at all, but he did the same idea of taking conversations from his podcast and turning it into a book, and that's part of the inspiration for what I'm doing.
Mm. Well, I think it's great. I think it's a great model. I hear people in my Facebook group talk all the time about, how do I write a book? What do I do to write a book? And I want to just give you kudos, Paul, for first of all having an incredible idea and a great accent. I can't imagine a better accent for a podcast host to have. But and then following through on this to create some really amazing copy, because I want to read. In fact, I will. I'll go back and read that chapter on Christo, just because I'm a Christo junkie and want to see
Yeah.
what it was about. And you're creating a really enticing book on a topic that you're kind of serving as the director on, thinking of an orchestra. The guy up front, not the composer, but whoever it is that stands up front with
Conductor.
the
Yeah.
conductor. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, my words are not coming to me today, but you're conducting the whole thing, and actually serving in some aspects as the composer as well. So
Yeah.
really cool, really cool.
Well, and I think anybody, even if they don't do a podcast, just getting onto a recorded call with somebody and
Yeah,
transcribing it and using this model will help them get a book done. And so, whether it's a conversation with your parents, talking about their growing up and their life and things like that, lessons they learned or whatever, using this kind of a model, I think just helps people get so much further in creating that book that they've dreamed of, that they never thought they could do. And so I love this model, that it's very authentic. It's not just simply write a topic on this thing and just hit publish and you're done. It's a lot more
yeah.
personal, a lot more about you and your tone and your content. And so I absolutely love it. I think this is brilliant.
Well, great. Well, again, thank you for your time. Everybody that joined us, thank you so much. We'll look forward to hearing back from Paul. And if you've got comments, suggestions, questions, put them down below the video here.